Hey all! We are very busy here. You're literally just getting my conversation cut off by a quarter of a second. And I'm trying to dictate to Dion over there the camera angle she gets on this beautiful Arthurian boat she's mostly completed.
Man, it's going to be so fantastic to sync that.
Yeah, so for more info on that, God, it's been a very busy week. I'm tired. I'm doing this because I was sick partly this week, and I'm recovering from that. And we've had a very busy day. We got a whole lot of items on the top 10-ish. A lot of planning. Why are you laughing? Am I just too honest?
Because when I'm on stream, I have to have a little bit of a filter, and so I just laugh.
Okay, instead of your little quips and remarks that are so wanted. Okay, everybody. Hey, real quick question. If anybody out there sent us a really beautiful wreath that smells wonderful in the office, please let us know, because it was addressed to Mark, and he said he did not order a wreath. But thank you if someone did. We'd just like to know who.
Also, let us know if you can hear us.
Oh, yeah. Shut up.
Well, I think Max normally does that.
Yeah, but I'm talking.
Says, I vote for no Tim filter.
You don't want that. It's actually,
nobody wants that.
Unfortunately, it's hilarious. You don't know how many times I've looked at him and I've said asshole, but that was funny.
So yes, they can hear you.
Wonderful.
Good. Good.
Okay, so let's get started. Some of the questions that are typically asked: any testing this weekend? We're not planning on testing this weekend. We had some. Basically, the state of the scenarios was great. We got a lot of really great feedback from people who jumped in. We've got a lot of kind of next steps that we've been working on.
Yeah. There's a bunch of shit that's really fucking close.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of things like right now, like some of the automation that I think we talked about last week that Caleb was working on. Matt's been sewing up a lot of kind of, oh, that's what I forgot. I didn't put Matt in here. I spent all this time asking him questions, and he's probably sitting there laughing his ass off because he was like, "Oh, I got to take time to write all this stuff." And I
wait, so
totally
you
forgot to put him
wasted
in.
an
I
engineer's
totally
time
forgot to
and
put him
then
in.
Didn't use the work.
All right, note to self: we got to add Matt's items. It's the top 15-ish.
If any of you guys watch AJ's stream, crack the whip on him because we're waiting on some ability active effect.
So TLDR kind of a lot of the focus that was just Max hitting the camera. We're not experiencing a rare eastern earthquake.
We had one of those yesterday.
Apparently we did. I didn't feel anything. I'm used to the San Francisco version.
Is that just gas?
So funny story moving over here was Heather, my wife, was really used to the thunderstorms and these big booms. So in the middle of the night, I was waking up freaked out because the whole house would shake. And I'd wake her up and I'd be like, "You got to get up." And the house would start shaking, and she'd go, "Why are you waking me up?" And I'd say, "I thought it was an earthquake. We got to get out of the house if that happens." Because literally since birth, living in the Bay Area, that's what I was used to. But it's not what happens over here. It's thunderstorms, which are scary. Okay.
Yeah, when the house shakes, we just get out umbrellas.
Yeah, exactly. My digression. So a lot of, from last week into this week, it's been a lot of kind of focused cleanup on where we were at in the last milestone and planning the next milestone, and several later milestones. One of the things that came out of that was combat readability. I spoke about it in... Did I do the stream last week? God, I don't even remember. Was I?
No, that was the short week.
That was the short week
in
Mark. Right. So...
Oh, right, where I was behind camera.
Right. So
I thought
that's
Mark
right.
did it last week. I wasn't on camera.
We've been busy. So one of the things that we're going to be talking about for several weeks now, and it's technically something that's going to be throughout the lifetime of the game, but one of the focuses right now is combat readability, and it's really just kind of plugging the holes of things that are very obvious, confuse play. Things like on the animation side, hey, when I jump in the air and swing my sword, my guy is jumping and not swinging his sword, getting an override for that. What are you doing? Oh.
I'm passing notes.
Things like the VFX, like some of the healer VFX weren't in there, so Mike made sure that all the healers have VFX, that they do work. Same with sounds, and I'm kind of touching on some of these items. But a lot of that has been things that we can kind of self-contained.
Codes.
No.
Okay.
Most of that focus has been hasn't needed a lot of engineering time. That's been kind of more on the art side, design side. This week it started to spill into some more engineering time with what Tim was mentioning about combat readability in AJ hooking up status effect icons. But
I wonder if anyone's heard anything Tyler has said with everything Tim's been doing. You're doing good, Tyler.
regardless, I should stop paraphrasing some of the items in the top 10 and instead focus
Man, if
on
only
the fact...
we had a big canonical list of these.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's not canonical because it's missing shit. You asked for this.
Yeah. I didn't. Someone on the stream did. So, moving forward, lots of combat readability improvements. The scenario system, as the tech continues, and it is going to start shaping some of the feedback for gameplay. And just as a reminder, this is not meant to be like a balanced map. This isn't supposed to be balanced gameplay. This is testing that a lot of the tech actually works, that things are where they should be, things are occurring as they should. We don't have asserts and bugs and stuff like that. And that just is going to be, over the next milestones, something that we kind of clean up on the road to beta and finish off some of the tasks for beta.
All that being said, we are doing some balance iterations. We know some stuff like after the first scenarios, it became clear that Siege was crazy overpowered, so we did a pass on that. All of that being said, we know that specifically I've been calling out a lot that Ben gets randomized as much, if not more, than a lot of the more randomized engineers. And so we've been trying to keep him focused on the thing in front of him instead of bouncing him around all over the place.
Yeah.
So if you see us not responding to balance feedback, it's not because we haven't heard it, probably, but because the guy who's responsible for that has other responsibilities that are higher priority.
Right, and balance is something that's going to happen all the time. It's never not going to be.
Yeah, we're balanced all the time.
So working on balancing the classes and the abilities will be an ongoing process throughout the lifetime of the game. So there should be no expectation that you're going to jump in and everything's just going to be balanced and you're going to be happy, because that always happens in MMOs, right?
Balance makes every game best.
Okay, so why don't we just get started on the top 10, because you and I are already starting to paraphrase and cover some of these items. All right.
That first one sort of production, you want to handle that?
Yeah, so basically the first one I put in here was a work in progress on sprint planning. Andrew's been over in Washington this week, kind of part of his regular cadence of visits to just get FaceTime with the engineers over there. And part of that this week has been primarily focused on both system design discussions that needed to happen as well as sprint planning. That's been going great. It's been exciting. The guys over there have been really taking the ball and running with it, so thank you very much, me personally.
Andrew corrects you that it's milestone planning.
Milestone planning.
It says right here on the paper, Andrew, sprint planning.
Sprint planning. It
Yeah.
says it right there. You can't. Milestone planning. So now that I've been derailed. All right, so basically that was the gist of it. Yeah, that was the gist of it. A lot of planning. That's great. And it's something that we're going to share with you moving forward, just not all the specifics in this update because it's an in-progress process right now. Why don't you start to the second one, because you wrote that.
Yeah. So number 2, talking about Google Cloud Platform. So when we started down the adventure of, that is, City-State Entertainment, Amazon was really the only company with a big, flexible, small company friendly cloud platform, and the internet and cloud offerings have come a long way since then. So we're evaluating some other guys, including Google's cloud platform. Doing that enables us to we're going to be able to support both, so we can look at the features from each of these guys that we like. There's some really cool stuff that we're looking into, though no promises yet, that we might be able to do for people who aren't physically located close to our main office in the East Coast. So that would be you West Coast US guys, Europe, Asia, the Pacific, all of you guys. There's some cool stuff that might happen there. No promises yet, but we're excited about it. And for us, right now, it looks like it's going to save us a ton of money, and we like saving money. That progress is ongoing. We've been working on it for a little bit, and once we get the code side of that done, there will be some testing that we need to do to see if it suits our needs.
Why don't you keep going, because a lot of these you can speak to.
Yep. Next one is we talked about a couple of times that we've been working on updating our database drivers. That landed last week or the week before, and went out to our game server immediately. So any of you guys who are ITs that have joined us for scenarios, you've gotten to play on that tech and probably didn't even realize it. That's the sign of a best database change deployment. So we've got this thing that we call the ecosystem. It's sort of our account web API. The forums talk to it, the store talks to it, the patcher talk to it. You can log into it. It's how we used to give out like the client downloads and the trillion info and all that jazz. That guy we wanted to marinate a little bit longer before we deployed because it controls all your account stuff and we didn't want to fuck those up. So we yesterday quietly rolled that out, day before yesterday. And it's basically been running ever since. And yeah, folks have been logging in, creating accounts, buying and upgrading pledges. So we're happy with that.
That being said, if you encounter any weirdness, of course, let us know.
Right. So the sort of why there is... The ecosystem wasn't the big reason to do this deploy. The reason, or the ecosystem was one of the more complicated sort of fallout of the code change. The reason we made the code change was because there's a bunch of new tech that we wanted to leverage in the game server in terms of the way it talks to the database for largely performance reasons. And we've already seen some of the benefits of that, like in terms of, I think we talked about like the item wipes. Oh no, Mark and I talked about that.
No.
Mark did this on stream and I mentioned the numbers, but like we basically, like some categories of item wipes and stuff like that happen as much as 3 times faster than they did before. So we're really happy with the server side perf from the database changeover. The account system was sort of fallout from that, and it's rolled out and deployed, and we're happy with it. So number 4 is an embedded web API server. It's another one of those things that's not hugely visible for you guys, but is a huge boon for any engineers that are running their own server. And so basically, most of our servers, like the physics server, or the web API server, well, not the web API server, the physics server, the proxy servers, all these guys, they're able to run from a programmer's machine just as part of our game server. And so it allows an engineer working on a server feature just to start up an entire server stack with one program. The web API was one of the exceptions to that, and so it was kind of a pain in the ass if you had to work with some of the interop between the game server and the web API, which has been a big thing lately because we push a lot of the UI stuff through the web API. And so Colin has been working on getting the web API server embedded so that it's part of that whole stack that comes online for devs. The TLDR is it lets us get features, bug fixes, and stuff like that out faster.
And just for fun, I made sure to mention that Colin had done a bunch of work that we talked about, getting some simple NPC healers and a little bit of, we can set up our NPCs to have different weapons, and we can set them up to have different armor. I think they are set up right now to use different armor, and we need a button to get some melee or some healer NPCs in there. And one of the fun things is you're like, okay, well now we have healer NPCs, great. And there's all these little things you don't think about, and I noticed in one of Colin's check-ins was make sure and check if dead before healing.
Right, yeah. They do the same thing for, like, attacking. Like, if anybody...
Make sure if dead before attacking.
If anybody was on, like, the pain train before, when the melee NPCs would just railroad somebody, they would just kill the shit out of you and then kill the shit out of your corpse.
And then I think it was, like, after the corpse would disappear, and then they just turn on you and beeline at you.
You'd respawn and your corpse stays around for a couple of seconds.
Yeah.
So they'd keep killing the shit out of your corpse, and then it would vanish. And then the pain train would move on.
It was very much an oh god moment.
Well, there was this whole strategy of, like, if you took one for the team and got killed by all the NPCs, you could just lay there dead, and like half their team was attacking your
focused.
corpse. Like, the rest of your team went on and did other shit. So anyways, yeah, we got that fixed. Got some cool new NPC features and embedded web API for dev support kind of stuff. UI dev real-time widgets. AJ has set up some Signal R stuff to allow the use of widgets that react to real-time events. just as group members, such as group members joining or leaving. It also gave AJ some more experience and exposure to ASP.NET, which is what our web API and web tool server use. So part of this is taking AJ, who's good at the front-end website of stuff, and getting him some more exposure to the back-end server side of stuff, and also getting some features, some more features plumbed through to the UI. Status effects icon. To improve combat readability, Rob has submitted code to send status effects to the UI. AJ is following up with a UI hookup, which will then need some more work from Ben to show the different effects correctly. We're testing basic functionality today. The goal is to make sure players know what is going on and why, and as a secondary measure to the animations, VFX, and SFX in game. So before anybody panics and goes, oh my god, did you change the goal from being able to see this stuff in the world? No, there's sort of two parts of this. One is we're just seeing, even if we get everything looking great in the world, is it helpful or is it more distracting to have the UI there? And in places where we haven't had a chance to get all the VFX build, we can plumb this through.
Right. It's a very big point that part of this is just like trying to worry about like noise that comes out of testing, and also there are so many VFX and so many sounds that need to be created, and so many permutations of those and amongst the classes and weapons and everything, that right now it's a focus on making sure that they play and work as expected, but there are going to be a lot of reuse and overlap and things. So right now, until we get into, the Blackguard's melee swing looks like that and it's different from the TDD Fianna, we need to have some extra layers in there just to help convey to players what's going on. It helps you guys honestly have more fun, but you can also give us better feedback.
Yeah. So again, there's no change in design direction. We're not moving away from displaying state through the world. It's in addition to that, both for immediate debugging purposes and potentially for long term.
Yeah, that in the world thing is
just
something that's going to grow over time.
So last tech one is animation. Brad's completed a first pass hooking animations up to the Scorpion Siege engine. Characters no longer dance in place and instead move side to side when aiming and performing an animation when firing. We're going to leave the more complex IK, like with your arms syncing up with stuff, for later, and next we'll improve the movement and timings as well as add some loading animations. Additionally, Brad continues to improve readability of the animation system for faster development and debugging. Also, if you remember what the mat stuff was and want to hit.
Oh yeah, the mat stuff. Basically, categorizing mat was just a bullet-pointed list that I'll add in here of a whole bunch of fixes that he's been working on, just in general, coming out of the last round of work from testing. It was getting some of the sounds working on the Scorpions. Honestly, sorry, Matt, I can't remember everything you wrote me, but I'll put that list in here because it was just a whole bunch of like help out in a bunch of different places. I love you. Shut up, you're making it worse. I even forgot it. Honestly, this is kind of what happens with a lot of people in a small team, is you end up kind of...
You forget what we tell you?
What? It just comes down to, we have like big main focuses, and once those are complete, then we have a bunch of noise around that needs to get hit with smaller tasks. So you'll sometimes see that in the top 10 where it's like, oh, Scott's been randomized and he's got 20 things he cleaned up. 20, you hear that, Scott? 20. Okay, let's get into some of the art things. Following up with...
Speaking of Scott.
On animation, Scott... Okay, so Scott's been blocking out some of the casting animations, primarily focused around the one-handed weapon sets. One of the interesting aspects of our game is that everybody can carry all the different weapons, and you can still cast with them. So what we've done is, right now you use a lot of the old animations, so you might be standing there with your sword and your shield, but then you go to this very old shared position and you do this like you're going to cast something, and your weapon's 90 degrees floating in your hand. So one of the more difficult things that we've worked on was the one-handed weapon permutations, trying to Frankenstein different pieces together so that you could we didn't have to create every single permutation of one-handed weapon. this is still a preliminary solution where we're trying to encompass everybody just for the getting into beta. Later on, we're going to do, we would like to do more specific animations so that your stance and posture and everything might be different for sword and shield, or 2 axes or 2 daggers. But for right now, we're using kind of a standardized kind of master stance that we work off of. So Scott's working on blocking out using focuses. It's something we haven't really played with much yet. The focus is an item that you can hold. It could be a book, it could be a stone. It's basically around our healers and our magic users. So we've just been kind of coming up with a couple of different animations that are more like self AoE and direct types of attacks, and figuring out the different permutations of arms that are needed to go with different weapons, so that if you've got a focus in this hand and this hand's free, you can do like I'm going to cast and then I do this. But if I've got a mace in this hand and a focus in this hand, then I'm doing this, and I cast with the mace instead of open-handed and the mace sitting in your hand. Those will move down the line farther with like 2-handed weapons. I'd like to get into some of those things so that we're not using shared poses, so that maybe with a pole arm, if you're casting a spell, you might do a, we're up to pantomime these. These things are kind of...
There needs to be a ribbon on the end of your halberd now.
Yeah. So some of these are going to be very interesting to figure out if a mage wants to run around, or a healer class. Anybody who's casting spell-like abilities wants to run around with a 2-handed greatsword. What's the solution for casting? So on one hand, it's a bit of problem solving. On the other hand, it's kind of a cool opportunity to make these really cool animations when you've got weapons. Some of those permutations will come much later down the road. Right now, it's more of a, like I said, clean up, get us into beta, shared animations. So actually very much to this, the next thing is Sandra's been starting to work on some of the shouts. We had a very limited shout animation that was just kind of a ah! And that animation...
How'd that go? I missed it. Okay.
I know there's going to be a GIF of this later.
I'll
give you more fuel.
You're welcome.
The animation actually wasn't hooked up. I worked with Ben a little bit just to make sure that in a future update we'll have the right tag. But one of the things we needed to do, we went through several permutations using the polearm, which Sandra had done a bunch of work on, so that they would have a shout animation when you're holding a polearm. This went through a couple of different permutations, one to get a nice silhouette, but also once we realized that since the ability actually goes off in a very short time period, we needed to make sure that the beginning of the animation conveyed that the VFX, the sounds, the ability was actually being triggered. And then the problem is that to show a really good silhouette, to make it look like, yes, this guy is actually doing a shout, that kind of requires a bigger, that's how it goes. And the problem was that was much longer than the ability actually was. So some of the tech that Brad was helping us with last week allows us to basically anim cancel out the rest of the ability. So if you want to shout and you're just standing still hanging out, the idea is you'll go through a cool epic full body animation showing that shout. But if you were, say, running and you wanted to immediately swing your polearm, you'd go into it just for that beginning, and then you'd really quickly blend into your actual ability animation, which would have a higher priority than the shout.
To be clear, Tyler said the word anim cancel. That's usually relative to anim lock, which we don't have, so don't panic.
Right. This is more a priority system, just to let you... since they go on 2 different skill tracks, as it was explained to me by Ben, the shout and the weapon, you should be able to swing your weapon independently of the shout. So you need a way to actually visualize that. So in this case, that priority system allows us to visualize it even though it was going off. This was the case, like I mentioned earlier, where you would jump and you wouldn't actually swing your sword even though the ability system was swinging your sword. So this priority system allowed us to make sure that certain animations had a higher priority over other ones. Thank you, Brad.
When Sandra was talking about the fact that she was working on shouts this morning, I was like, man, I played a game recently that had a really good shout sound effect. And I couldn't remember what it was. And then like an hour later, I was like, wait, that was our game.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so good on you, DB. I like the shout sound a lot.
I think it only has like a one shout right now, I think is shared. I think.
I don't know, but it sounds real good.
Granted, if you guys play the game a bit, you might hear DB's grunts as well, because I think he took a lot of Foley of himself.
Big battles are going to sound like sexy time with DB. All right.
What was that test you were doing with all the bots?
Yeah, I was just running a bot test, and so it was like a bunch of bots beating on each other.
But there
was so much grunting.
They were playing. I think the problem was they were actually playing the grunts when they played the swing.
They were doing it when they swung and when they flinched.
Yeah, so they were double.
There was just like a whole bunch
of. It was hilarious. Okay.
Number 10.
Okay, number 10. Thank you, Max.
Choo choo.
Art, female NPC clothing. So I wrote appropriately. John had the unenviable task this week of unwrapping all 3 female NPC clothing sets, which is a very time-consuming task to do well. That's basically just laying out all the UVs in accordance to the way our characters' different body parts are set up on the sheet. And then he began working on the materials. He finished off the Tuatha, a pass on the Tuatha materials. I think we still need a little bit of a review of it. You can look at the stream from earlier this week, and he will continue on the other 2. The Arthurian boat, Dion's back from a brief home visit, and she's been finishing off the Arthurian boat model, which she's making screenshots of over there.
I was promised screenshots.
Yes, you don't get the screenshots yet. They will get the screenshots. SNS Patcher update number 12. Both James and Michelle, I'll have images in the update today. I've just been working on a minor Patcher update pass, just a little bit of styling change for the SNS, the scenario stuff. It includes a bit of styling from James and some splash page concepts that we would then animate in the Patcher. So we'll just kind of show you guys some of that behind the curtain work in progress stuff. So this is literally encompasses everything I was starting off saying at the beginning of the stream. Number 13, SFX, VFX, combat readability. Both Mike and DB have spent a lot of this week, as I said earlier, going through, fixing things, adding VFX or sounds where needed, verifying they work, and that's just going to continue for several weeks. And like I said, for the life of the project. But this first pass is just making sure that when you do something, you get a clear visual and auditory indication. That allows us to not only work on the tech, lets us work on the ability system, it also lets us, from an art side, work on the kind of timing of everything, making sure everything syncs up. And then we can actually, once we have a good solid idea of each of those individual elements and how they work for anything such as a deflect, then we can move forward working on permutations and variable, just all the fun stuff. Not that all this isn't fun. I'm honest. Honestly, I felt like I was selling that short because I've enjoyed all this problem-solving part so much. Like, okay, well, now that the deflect doesn't sound like it hits the sound. Oh, the hit frame for the deflect is like at hit frame 4, but our guy raises his weapon to deflect it at like 12. Okay, well, we need to fix that. Like, I love that. It's fun. Number 14, which would have been 15 if I had included Matt's stuff.
Design. You won't let yourself off the hook.
I know, it's just fun. Design updated abilities. So
if Matt had done anything noteworthy, I'm sure it would be on this list.
Oh.
The best part is that Matt had a hitch in the stream when you first talked about it,
yeah.
so he was wondering why you said his name.
So, updated abilities. So, making sure VFX, SFX, and animations are all playing with abilities, debugging abilities, and overall testing puts Ben right in the middle of the chaos, which I thought was a pretty good way of putting this. As you said, he gets randomized a little bit. Ben's work ethic and technical prowess, and maybe oneness with the Force, has helped him in the lengthy task updating and improving all the ability XML. This update deprecates old or obsolete syntax, groups several categories of abilities into less files, and simplifies our tagging method, making it easier to use and debug. I don't know that I need to say much more than that, but basically Ben has just taken everything and is kind of updating it and simplifying it, making it easier. It's fantastic. He's great.
The rehabilitation and the subsequent building of the abilities has been a great big learning curve for Ben, and we've done as much as we could to make that easier, but it's still a crap ton of data that isn't very well presented to him, that he's just sort of had to scour through and learn with help from whoever had the time to help him, and he's done a fantastic job of absorbing it. However, the way in which we lay out abilities has changed as he's gotten more comfortable with the system. And so we're sort of going back and retrofitting a bunch of old abilities to make it easier for him to work on moving forward. So there's been a lot of changes happening there that aren't necessarily gameplay. They're actually the structure of the guts of the abilities just to facilitate him working and iterating on them.
Speaking of which, one of the things that Matt did this week was to help Ben out with this process.
You're welcome.
I think it was I think it was Ben looking at a screen of just red text, and I don't know what to make of this.
He called me and Andrew over and goes, "What does this mean?" And we're both like,
yeah. So Matt has a couple of check-ins that are like, make Ben's life easier. God, what we wouldn't do without Matt.
What Ben wouldn't do without Matt.
What Ben wouldn't do without Matt. Okay. That's... Can you... We're a little punchy today, aren't we? We're tired. Okay. That's the end of the top 10-ish, which was about 15 items. We'll be putting out an update.
14 and the one that won't be mentioned.
Put out 15. Putting out an update. I'll add Matt in there. Things have been going well here in the studio. Please ask us some questions.
Okay.
I was going to say try and keep them to art, production, design. No, sorry, not design.
Not design, Tyler. That was what you were supposed to.
Okay, let's go back on that. We're tired.
So we have here a programmer and a producer/artist. So ask your art questions and your programming questions, and those are the ones that will get asked and answered.
I was going to say, can I be the producer/artist, but I don't want that.
You can have conversations, though, that are like, just add more punch to it. Do you know what I mean? And the other person goes, oh, yeah, I do.
So design questions we will have to put off until we can get Mark or Ben on here. Sacrix asks, will the classes in Beta 1 have their class-specific weapons, which said classes are supposed to be good at? For example, Mjolnir with a one-handed hammer/lightning, rather than just, for example, all melee using two-handed. I can understand testing all weapons, but will the classes feel as they should in a unique way?
You thought about that way more than I did.
What were you going to say?
Design question next.
Oh. I was going to say no, in all honesty, there's a yes and no to that, because right now we are only trying to get into beta. The classes are going to be rejiggered constantly. Right now the scope is, at least for the animations, VFX, and sounds, is to get a big wide swath. It's not getting into very specific permutations. While I can't speak to the specifics of what Ben has in there right now as a designer for the different classes.
Sorry.
What, is it relevant?
Andrew wants to call in to Seattle. Tim, hold up your phone. I don't know if you...
Let's go for it.
Can't we use Tyler's phone?
We can.
Mostly because I'm a lazy ass, and for no
I don't know if
other
you're going to
reason.
see him very well. Honestly, for right now, Sacrix, I don't want to commit to too much, because honestly, we've got such a wide swath that we're trying to hit that whenever I always try and say like specifics come later. However, some of those abilities are already in there. I just can't remember. Like, one of the things we actually did call out, it's on the my bonus thing to do, is get a very specific Mjolnir one-handed looking hammer in there. It's not in there right now, but maybe save this for Ben.
Odilvik, I think it's crazy enough in here that I don't need to shoot Tyler and Tim with a Nerf gun.
You wouldn't like that anyways. My Nerf gun's bigger.
Yeah, that's true.
And it kind of hurts.
Manuel...
that was terrible.
Manuel Becerra.
Where the fuck is
best
Hangouts?
guess.
Yeah, why isn't... I thought he was supposed to be calling one of us.
No, he
your
told
name?
us to call him, and you said you were going to do it.
Oh, I'm going to call
literally
him.
like 20 seconds ago.
Okay, I'm going to keep going with the I'm kind of tired, it's been a long week, as my excuse, and that may carry into
Andrew
next
is
week.
calling me.
He is?
Oh god, that's a terrible view.
Yep, we got you.
Okay, you're going to have to probably, do this.
Hello from Seattle, Tim.
I don't know where my microphone is. Say something. Say something.
Just hold it up.
I'm trying to hear where
he's
my microphone is.
He's saying hold it right here.
Hello, Tim.
Can you hear him? Can you see Andrew?
Hi, Andrew.
This is a horrible idea.
That's why I was trying to hear where my microphone is so I could put it down here.
Yeah, but then they can't see his beautiful face.
I think they'd rather hear him than see him.
No, you gotta show your TV. You gotta show your... Yeah.
I don't even think they can see that on the camera.
Now they can't see
it's
you
balanced,
or hear him.
It's balanced on the mic.
I'm taking you over to Matt because Matt didn't get to say his stuff. I can only see Tim. I can't see the internet.
Here,
I can't see.
Hold on.
None of the stream cannot hear you.
See?
That's
way too close.
way too close?
It only works when you see the camera. Oh, hi.
Lodoween wants a beard status update.
I would like to express his displeasure.
Wait. Let's play producer on this and just get done what we were trying to get done out of this. What are we trying to do here?
Andrew just hung up on me.
Oh, okay.
Dick.
I mean,
I think Matt was going to try and list off his achievements.
Next time I can just get Andrew in a picture-in-picture
I
type
mean,
deal here.
You've got Discord on your phone. I'm sure that's how he sent you your list.
Well, considering we're still talking about it, I could
Somebody
go and
ask
look.
a goddamn question.
Yeah.
Okay, so Manuel Becerra on the YouTube chat asks, do you have an overall idea of the minimum specs that are going to be required to run this game smoothly? I know it is not written in stone and it can change, but if my question applies, I'd love an answer.
We should have Andrew call in and answer that question.
Yeah, it'd be great to have Andrew call in and answer that. Yeah, I mean, honestly, we're not trying to brush this off. The last time that Andrew talked about this was, I think, a DirectX 10 conversation or something. Yeah, this is going to be more of a, Andrew conversation.
Well,
Andrew will drop the answer in Twitch chat, and Max can relay it for us.
Andrew, let us know.
Well, there's also the MooBot command on Twitch chat to show the last min spec update from Andrew.
Neat.
So there's that. Supremax asks, is there any impact on animations from different storm states?
Oh, you mean like Veil Storms, I'm assuming?
I think they mean the literal command in the game.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
The rain and
no,
snow.
there is no current impact on that, though. That's definitely something we'd like to work on later. We need you guys fighting and enjoying that first before Rain makes it
a soggy meth hobbit animation.
No, that is one of those fun, sexy things that is at a later planned date, but is definitely something on our radar.
Future Tyler's problem.
Yeah.
Grumman, I don't really understand your question. Will the game have more punch to it by the time beta releases?
Twice as much punch.
Much punch.
So maybe you can clarify a little.
No, we got it.
We got it.
We got his answer.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Twice as much punch.
At least.
Actually, I can even quantify that. Just in, talk about animation or VFX or sounds. I mean, all of this stuff is that through the life of the game is going to improve.
Yeah, we're expecting exponential growth on pop, too.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it wasn't a serious question, but I was trying to give a serious answer. Wait, let me talk about Matt for a moment. So Matt's been busy technical design meetings.
For the first time today.
Look, I really appreciate all his hard work. I want to make sure it gets conveyed.
All right, great.
Fixing siege engine sounds, which I did remember. Generalizing global settings on the server to be scenario specific. Improve projectile prediction between client and server. Supporting AJ getting Mihuge's work in on new skill buttons into the client. There you go.
So Matt basically did everything.
Yeah. Okay, we're done with Matt.
That sounded like 6 of our top 20.
Sacrix asks, will you finish the 14 of 32 tasks before calling beta, or will, once SNS is ready to go, you may call it a beta?
No, the SNS is not meant to derail those items. The SNS is meant to kind of encompass some of those items, but giving fun gameplay along the way.
And correct me if I'm wrong, the development of SNS will continue after we go into beta.
Oh yeah. Yeah, this is an ongoing. The Dragon Circle is a much larger concept. It just kind of it's a really great idea. I've given Mark a lot of props for this. It lets us chew off reasonable chunks at a time, and lets us make gameplay and test game loops of those smaller chunks versus saying all of these things have to be done to actually achieve that.
Right.
Lottoween asks, will clipping range extend out farther, perhaps with a further reduction in LOD, when a character is viewing an area from the top of a high point, rather than the distance being determined by a straight line from the viewer, which makes elevation reduce the viewable distance?
I can speak to a couple of different parts of that without giving an absolute definitive answer. I know that we want vision to be a stat that affects things like this. And so in that way, vision may limit some of your clip range things. I also know 3 months ago, maybe, we turned up the clip plane from like 1 kilometer to 4 kilometers. And some of the client guys were saying we could do more than that. There's just some problems to be solved to facilitate that. So we've talked about going longer, and we've talked about game mechanics that will shrink that. So it's a little bit of a thing in flux, and it's mostly going to come down to what's the right fit for the kind of gameplay and battles that we want to support.
You guys can stop me if this is a design question. Muerta Gris on the YouTube chat asks, Looking Glass Studio developed a system for the expansion of the sound depending on the soil, walls, doors, etc. Are you thinking of putting something like that in for the NPC guards?
For the guard? I don't understand why that would be specific to the guards. It sounds like it's basically
for
trying
Thief
to...
Dark Project is what they created it for.
Oh, no. So guards in our game are not going to be these clever line of sight
that's not
listening
the point of the game.
for...
Got it.
Right, like, guards are sort of a blunt instrument that are there to help defend your keep when everyone is asleep.
Yeah, those types of mechanics we actually want to put on the players. That's part of, like, the stats, the vision system, some of the things we've talked about, like, you know, does a certain class detect another sneaky class before the other ones?
Now we have talked
that's up
about
to players.
Stealth/sneaking as a mechanic, but it's not going to be this type of, like, ultra-sensitive spy, rogue, thief-esque game. It's going to be more like stealth and camouflage and that sort of stuff, which I know it sounds like it they're the same thing, but it's not. We're not making a stealth simulator.
Odilvik asks, will there be a hopping animation created for those times when players might be crippled on one leg or lose a leg or put a step into lava?
That's something I think we've answered a couple of times. Those smaller permutations of, like, on fire, wounded, things like that are something we'd like to explore once we get through the combat readability phase we're in that gets us into beta.
When we started talking about the new animation system, stuff like that were factors that we wanted to support, but there are not things we need or even want to support this early at this juncture.
Right. You have to kind of think down all the dependencies with questions like this, and they're perfectly valid questions, and I love them because they're clearly people who are excited about some of the ideas we've talked about. But if you take it a step back, it's, one of the things that's going to change over time is how fast your character is moving, which means that when we do those changes, we have to change the actual animation assets. And the more animation assets we have for movement right now, that means more things we have to build later when we already know those risks are ahead of us. So they're more, some of those things will come on board once we get, like, this combat readability, we get into beta 1, and we can start working on some other permutations. Right now I'm more worried about, like, the timing of things that we have for your movement, some of the cleanup in the animation system, and while we'd like to get, like, oh, I'm on fire and I, move a little bit differently, a lot of those things are going to be later once we've got the core concepts working and people go, this is fun, I like the way it feels, the speed feels right. Then we can start iterating on all those different permutations. Think of anything that's like a permutation of a basic thing. That's later. Right now it's all just the basics.
There's this sense of going from the generic to the specific, and in between there is even stuff like just being slowed, maybe having a general like limp kind of animation that works for everybody, and then we can go to the more specific of like, why are you limping? Well, you're limping because you lost a leg or because you stepped in lava.
Yeah,
and so those are just hypotheticals I'm laying out here.
Technically, your example, we do have a version of that with the Anim Walker that I was talking about with Brad. That actually will it transitions between like I think it's a run,
right.
A sprint, a run, a walk.
Yeah.
I can't remember how many animations are there, and then even a walk in place. And that actually slows your character down and speeds him up, and it blends between those different cycles that Scott created. So in some regard, we have some of that. You can see it if you run up and down hills. But getting into more like the wounded idea and stuff like that would be a later thing.
Some people posted some questions but said skip it if it's more of a Mark thing. I am skipping them. Mia Tallis asks, will the distance sound effects have just lower volume or have more complex processing to be more realistic?
I can so there's two parts to this. One is like DB's intent, what he can control. There's also more of like the ramifications of how many sounds we're playing. One of the things we haven't really hit yet is kind of investigating how many sounds are going on at a time. I know that DB has been creating some distant battle sounds for use around this concept, but I don't have a very specific answer at this point.
I'll have to
but
show
conceptually, that's the idea, is trying to figure out what do I need to pay attention to, what don't I need to pay attention to, and grouping together sounds for a battle. And if one guy targets you, then we predominate his sound moving forward.
I'll have to show you and probably DB this later in my bot testing, ARC testing on Wormling yesterday. I teleported like 1,000 bots into like a 10-foot box, and them all trying to walk around was just like white noise.
Right. So those are the kind of things that just need to be figured out later once we've got, like I said, all the basics working.
Well, we have come to the end of the art and programming questions that are in the chat for now.
Slackers.
Yeah. What time is it?
We got like 15 minutes.
4:48.
Well, Tyler's just gonna have to sing a song to keep the stream going or something.
No, Tyler's got other things he's got to go do.
We could get to our other stuff.
I love the questions, but I do have other things. Got to get that update out.
Now with more Matt.
Now with more Matt.
Okay, people are jumping in now. Sacrix asks, what's the status of the UI once beta starts?
It'll still be a UI.
It'll still be there.
Grumman asks, will the Wilhelm scream work its way into the game?
Oh shit, that's a good idea.
Is it though? Is it though?
It's got to be like, we got to come up with something clever. Like, there's this one cliff in the whole game, and anyone who jumps off that one cliff plays the Wilhelm scream or something.
Dakubra.
Honestly, Sacrix, the UI question. Sorry, I felt a little dickish. Was I'd save that for more of a JB Andrew conversation.
There's a couple of factors at play there. There's a big overhaul that we want to do to the sort of underlying low-level bits that drive the UI, and that will empower us to do more cool things with the UI. Some of the more cool things that we want to do with the UI we could probably do with the current one we've got, but they would have to be redone with the new one.
Yeah.
So some of the stuff we've put on hold pending this heavy refactor of the low level stuff. But I'm not going to speak to the timeline.
Yeah. Correct me if I say this incorrectly, but the decision was made that if we were to do this refactor, it would delay beta. We didn't want to do that, and we decided that we would not put too much effort into finished looking UI for the time being, that we would go with more like the dev UI and things like that, so that it got us the gameplay, it got us the testing, it got us into beta, and then we could take a step back and actually do this refactor.
JB has jumped in to say, don't expect much of a UI upgrade before beta 1 starts.
Right.
Decobra, we will have more programming streams. Check our stream schedule that we put out on a weekly basis.
You guys should ask for a Matt stream.
Yeah, Matt gets a lot done during the week if we haven't made that clear, and I don't know, I think, did he tell you he really enjoyed doing live streams?
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Yeah, definitely.
Honestly, he didn't. So, Matt, we're not committing to
And he's really photogenic.
He's really photogenic.
Swazi asks, we were talking in the Cube forum about textures on buildings. As some people have mentioned, the buildings don't match too well with the surrounding textures. Will that get updated?
Certainly, yes. I was assuming maybe something with Cube. So one of the things we need to do, I asked Michelle to go through and create some new materials, so that we could, some new visuals that were kind of different realm-based things. The visuals for the buildings are going to continue to grow. Right now, we're more worried about performance of buildings. Certainly, we'll keep adding textures and materials. It's going to depend on performance. But yeah, they'll get an update.
Rodolphus asks, Tim, in a hypothetical world with no copyright law, no moral concept of IP, and you could look at the source code of any other game, what game would you choose and why?
Shit. What game would I choose? It would probably have to be one of, like, the numerous tabletop RPGs I've played. In my younger days, I was a huge fan of the Rifts tabletop, so that would be really cool. I was excited to see what CCP would do with World of Darkness, and then disappointed when they didn't. So that would be a cool thing that I'd like to explore.
JB adds, there will be small improvements to the UI, but you won't see a big overhaul.
You looked at me weird. Have you not heard of Rifts?
You said tabletop RPG, and I was like, how are you going to look at the source code of the tabletop RPG?
Well, he was just asking, like, what game would I do?
Oh, okay. I think he
meant
meant
for
video.
source code. What source code would you look at?
Oh, what source code would I look at?
Yeah.
Some of us were listening.
I'm tired.
Liver. What is it that what Mark does? Like, kidneys.
Keep going. I'll come back to that one.
All right. Andrew's answer is Last of Us. I'd like to discuss its game object architecture. Let's see. Arag1 says, or Arag, the user stories mention a lot of props, even including ladders. However, I couldn't find any door or gate. Will those become props to add after the cube building was produced, or will they find their way into Cube itself?
Right, so filling in on maybe if you don't know some of the discussions we've had, one of the goals with Cube is to be able to integrate props into it. Those are things that are not made of cubes. So if you wanted to place like a potted plant or a box or any kind of thing like that, or a door, those are special pieces, that is tech that has yet to be done. Specifically, there aren't any doors or gates, as that's something that we need to do coming soon, so that you can actually place them when you make a keep out of cubes. So it just hasn't been done yet.
Odelvik and Muertegris, those are more design questions, so we'll take a pass on those until we get a designer on the couch here.
You can come do that on stream. They told me I don't have to have a filter.
Yeah, if you want to come dance over here. Come on, buddy.
Sacrix asks,
probably Magica.
Oh yeah, that was a fun game.
oh.
Max was like, wait, what?
I'm like, yeah. I'm like, what are you talking about? All right. When is Cube going to get an overhaul with real metrics, and how will it run in the real game, not a standalone roleplay area?
With real metrics?
No, with real metrics.
Maybe he means like cube stats and everything like that. I don't have a thing to speak to on that right now.
Grumman asks, will Tyler work on tree animations for wind and storm interactions?
My hope is that we would come up with an automated solution around that with like vertex weighting or vertex color or something. Andrew,
I'm looking forward to some pantomime to that effect.
Andrew honestly probably has something.
I missed that. Could you do it again?
No. Andrew probably has something in his head of how he'd like to do it in a performant way, and that's one of the most important things with our game, kind of supporting this huge view and getting things to 1,000 players, 500 players on the screen. So that will probably be a later thing that we'll do, and I would never really want to do that by hand, honestly. But if we do it, we do it.
Kick Assassins asks, when will CSE East and West meet in Wyoming and fight for supremacy?
How do you know we haven't?
Who
Why don't you think
Wyoming.
neither of us have any scars or battle wounds? Because we won.
Can't we pick a warmer state?
Yeah, but it was more epic with the snow, and Matt came at me with so many weapons. God, his prowess was amazing, but it was a good fight.
Yeah, it was his prowess you were paying attention
Manuel
to.
Becerra, those are more design questions.
You can just see Matt's face right now. It's suffering.
I can
through
actually
this
see
stream.
Matt's face right now.
Literally, Matt has done nothing to deserve the attention. It's literally my fault that I omitted his things.
This is an art and tech question.
Yay.
Helzik asks, this is mostly fueled by my own inattention to progress, but how far along is realm-based environment transformations on Capture?
Oh, so basically the last time we were on it, there's a bit of we've kind of dialed back the scope in the immediate future for all the Beta 1 assets for the environments, simply because I have not had any time to really work on it recently. What I did is we set up several kind of test cases with specific assets that would swap. Brad did a whole bunch of work on improving the speed of the terrain updates based off of George's threading library, added some new things to that library, and I made a map for it, and honestly, it's just kind of fallen by the wayside while we've focused on some of the bigger scenario and Beta 1 goals. What I would like to do is in the soon-to-be future is get a little bit of time to maybe create a map for one of the scenarios where we actually do incorporate it. One of the things we've said, and we keep saying, is that the scenarios are meant to incorporate small parts of Beta 1. Personally, what I would like to do, we haven't talked about this specifically yet, but would be to create a scenario where it's like a capture point type of mechanic. We use the realm swapping tech in there as a test to see how well it performs from the last update, and we do that with a limited number of assets. The reason why I say limited number of assets, because right now we've got a lot of things to do, and I've just kind of toned down the number of assets we could complete with technically 4 variations, which really balloons the scope. So for right now, what I'd like to do as part of one of our future milestones is see if we can kind of work into a small map that actual tech, get backers in there, see how it performs on different computers and stuff. It's kind of where it's at. It's still something that we are going to do. It's just been dialed back a little bit in recent months as I've been really busy.
Helzik says, thank you very much for answering. I'm going to give the 5-minute warning, folks. 5-minute warning before we're going to shut this down. Odovic wants to know, who is further ahead for beta, the art or programmer team?
Oh, art, but it's mainly because we have, in some cases, less dependencies. There's more tech that just needs to be created. That's the reason why the team is more tech dependent. Almost all projects start out much more tech dependent to actually build the systems for which the artists can actually work upon. So if someone turned around and said, hey, here's your system for dyes and tattoos, go, we would suddenly be behind.
Grumman and CSC George want you to act out how you want the trees to animate, but we need to see you do it. So
Never afraid to make a fool of myself. All right. So, if I was a stoic pine, I'd probably.
That's...
And I'd have this. DB would do this really nice creaking sound.
Oh no, you're doing fine.
And then the tip would kind of do this, right? And wait, why is my phone going off? Stop. Now, if I was a more of a deciduous, maybe, you know, I'd kind of like some of the trees. I'd probably have like a. These guys would be doing their own thing. They'd kind of go in circles, and the top would kind of sway drunkenly. Wait, and if I was a bush, I'd just do this, right?
CSC West is taking notes.
This reminds me of like a bunch of the cartoons I watched in like the 80s, and now I want to see like this in like the Cuphead style.
Yeah. Wait, can I come up with another permutation? The oak.
I don't even know.
Because they're so big. All of this kind of holds... Haven't you ever looked at an oak in the wind?
Yeah,
Come on.
They creak. I
Yeah,
guess.
right. It's just very small outer kind of stuff. So it'd be...
All right. Well.
What did you do today at work, Daddy? I made a fool of myself.
That was an amazing way to end this.
You
stream,
had
I
help.
think.
I had help.
It's a team effort, you guys.
So keep an eye out for our update this evening. The top 10ish will be going out in that. And
Yeah, there's no test planned for this weekend.
No test planned.
Very, very likely we're going to be doing some testing next week, whether it be impromptu or planned. Once again, thank you from all of us. You guys are great. Best project ever. Best experience I've had. I love my team. We continue working hard, and just jump into those playtests and let us know what you think.
We'll see you later.
Thanks, guys.